The air in the Grand Synod of the Ethelgard was not merely stale. It was heavy with the particulate dust of a dying civilization, a physical manifestation of the decay that had seeped into the marrow of their empire. High Archon Valerius sat upon the obsidian throne, his faceted, crystalline skin dull and gray, lacking the iridescent luster that had once signified the vitality of his lineage. Around him, the vast, circular chamber rose like the interior of a hollowed-out mountain, the walls lined with the floating pods of the representatives, thousands of distinct species and planetary governors who made up the hegemony. Once, this hall had been a cacophony of light and debate, a symphony of governance that spanned star systems. Now it was a tomb of hushed whispers and terrified silence. The central hololith, a massive pillar of hard light that usually displayed trade routes and stellar nurseries, now projected a single ominous vector, the approach path of the Terran vessel. They had called for aid. They had cast their pride into the void, broadcasting a desperate plea on all frequencies, begging for salvation from the gray blight, a necrotic, semi-sentient fungal pathogen that consumed biomass and atmosphere alike. The Ethelgard, masters of bio-weaving and stellar architecture, had failed to stop it. Their fleets burned, their quarantine zones collapsed, and their science academies fell silent. In their desperation, they had looked to the younger races, the upstarts, the ones who had not yet learned the proper ways of galactic diplomacy. They had looked to Terra. The response had been a single ping. No video, no diplomatic preamble, no negotiation of terms, just a set of coordinates and an arrival time. And now, as the time approached, the mood in the Synod was not one of relief, but of profound, existential dread. For the censors of the hegemony, however degraded by the war against the Blight, were still capable of analyzing the displacement of mass in hyperspace. What was coming was not a medical frigate. It was not a convoy of bioships laden with retroviral agents or terraforming supplies. The mass shadow moving toward their capital world, Ethelgard Prime, was larger than their orbital defense platforms. It was dense, shielded by layers of high-impact alloys and magnetic fields so strong they distorted the light of local stars. It was a weapon. There was no other word for it. The logic of the High Council had fractured into panic. Why would the humans send a dreadnought to a plague zone? The theories whispered through the neural links of the representatives were dark and paranoid, born of centuries of witnessing the cruelty of the galaxy. Perhaps the humans viewed the Blight not as a tragedy to be healed, but as a weakness to be exploited. Perhaps they were coming to glass the planet, to burn the infection out by incinerating the host, ensuring the safety of their own borders at the cost of the Ethelgard's extinction. Valerius rested his heavy head against the high back of the throne, his multifaceted eyes watching the countdown. He had hoped for saviors. He feared he had summoned executioners. "The signature is confirmed, High Archon," whispered Xylos, the Minister of Defense, his voice trembling as it vibrated through his avian throat sac. Xylos stood at the foot of the throne, clutching a datapad as if it were a shield. "It is a singular vessel. Designation UNSC Hammer of Hephaestus. Class unknown. Tonnage exceeds maximum reading capability of local scanners. It is entering the upper ionosphere now." The hall murmured, a sound like dry leaves skittering over stone. The holographic display shifted, showing the live visual feed from the orbital satellites. Clouds, gray and sick with the spores of the Blight, parted violently. A shape descended. It was not elegant. The ships of the Ethelgard were spun from light and glass, curved and organic, designed to flow with the stellar winds. The human ship was an affront to aesthetics. It was a brutalist slab of gray metal, a flying city of gunmetal and scars, bristling with antennas, heat vents, and weapon ports that glowed with a menacing crimson energy. It did not glide. It pushed the atmosphere out of its way through sheer kinetic force, creating sonic booms that rattled the very foundations of the Synod Tower. It was a hammer indeed, a hammer falling upon a bruised and broken world. "They are not opening a channel," Xylos noted, his voice rising in panic. "They are bypassing orbital traffic control. They have locked targeting solutions on the capital city. Archon, they are targeting the population centers." A wave of terror washed over the assembly. Pods drifted away from the center, as if physical distance could save them from the judgment descending from the sky. Valerius felt a cold resolve settle in his chest. If this was to be the end, if the humans had come to scavenge the bones of his empire, he would meet them with whatever Ignity remained. "Activate the planetary shield," Valerius commanded, though he knew it was futile. The generators were failing, clogged with the Blight's biomass. "And open a wideband transmission. I will speak to the commander of this vessel. I will ask them why they answer a cry for mercy with the machinery of war." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. The screen flickered. The human ship was now hovering directly over the city, casting a shadow so vast it plunged the Synod into an artificial twilight. The crimson lights on its hull pulsed, a heartbeat of impending violence. Static washed over the main screen, followed by the image of a human. He was seated in a command chair that looked as utilitarian as his ship, surrounded by officers who worked with terrifying, silent efficiency. The human commander was old, his face lined with the stress of high-gravity living, his hair cropped short and gray. He wore a uniform of dark charcoal, unadorned by the jewelry or sashes common to Ethelgard nobility. His eyes were cold, scanning the visual feed of the Synod with a detached, clinical scrutiny that made Valerius feel like a microbe under a microscope. "This is Admiral Vance of the Terran Coalition," the human said. His voice was deep, distorted slightly by the translation matrix, stripping it of nuance. It sounded like grinding stones. "We received your distress call regarding the pathogen. We are in position." Valerius rose, his joints clicking. He tried to project the authority of 10,000 years of history. "Admiral Vance," Valerius began, "we asked for aid. We asked for doctors, for scientists. You bring a warship. You target our cities. Your vessel blocks our sun. Is this how Terra answers the dying, with threats?" Vance did not blink. He did not apologize. He glanced at a screen off camera, then looked back at Valerius. "We brought the right tool for the job, Archon. The pathogen you described, the Gray Blight, is not a disease. It is a biological weapon, a swarm intelligence based on parasitic colonization. Standard medical intervention would only feed it. We analyzed your biology and the pathogen's vectors. We determined that soft measures would result in 100% casualty rates within 3 solar cycles." The human leaned forward, his hands clasping together. "We aren't here to comfort you while you die. We are here to stop the dying, but the method is invasive." Xylos shrieked, a high-pitched sound of hysteria. "Invasive! You are charging weapon capacitors. Our sensors detect a massive buildup of thermal and kinetic energy in your ventral cannons. You are going to fire upon the city." "We are," Vance said simply. The admission sucked the air out of the room. The honesty was more terrifying than a lie would have been. "The pathogen has integrated into the crust of your planet and the nervous systems of your populace. It communicates via a subsonic frequency that regulates your own heartbeats. If we try to surgically remove it, the shock kills you. If we try to poison it, it adapts. The only way to save the host is to kill the signal." The Admiral checked a readout. "We are deploying the resonance cannon. It will fire a concentrated pulse of high-frequency gravimetric waves directly into the mantle of your world, specifically tuned to the resonance frequency of the parasite. It will shatter the cellular structure of the blight instantly." Valerius stared in horror. "Gravimetric waves? Into the mantle, you will trigger earthquakes. You will liquefy the foundations of our cities. And the noise. A sound loud enough to kill a parasite inside our bodies will surely shatter our own minds. You speak of saving us by destroying us." "Calculated risk," Vance replied, his tone devoid of empathy, purely focused on the mathematics of survival. "The structural integrity of your buildings is compromised anyway. Your physiology is silicon-based. You can withstand the vibration better than the carbon-based parasite. It will hurt. It will be terrifying, but the alternative is extinction. We are not asking for permission, Archon. We are informing you of the procedure. We start in 5. The screen went black. The connection was cut. Valerius stood frozen. Five what cycles, hours? "Archon," Xylos screamed, pointing at the sensor readout. "The countdown, it is not hours, it is seconds. 5 seconds. The panic that erupted was primal. Representatives clawed at the seals of their pods. Some fell to their knees in prayer to the Great Weaver. Valerius merely sat down. He watched the countdown on the main screen, the red numerals ticking down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The world ended, or so it seemed. The hammer of Hephaestus did not fire a beam of light. It did not launch a missile. It pulsed. A visible ripple of distortion shot downward from the ship, a concussion of pure force that slammed into the atmosphere. The Synod Tower groaned, the unbreakable crystal of its walls fracturing in spiderweb paw. T-turns, the floor beneath them buckled. But it was the sound that was the true weapon. It was not heard with the ears, it was felt in the teeth, in the bones, in the very core of their consciousness. It was a scream of the universe, a tearing of the veil. Valerius felt his vision white out. Pain, sharp and electric, arced through every nerve ending in his body. He felt the heavy, suffocating weight of the blight, the dark presence that had been clouding his mind for months, suddenly spasm. It was as if 1,000 hooks were being ripped from his soul simultaneously. He tried to scream, but the air had been solidified by the pressure. He saw Xylos crumple, his beak open in a silent wail. The light in the room shifted from the dim gray of the infection to a blinding, searing white. The humans were destroying them. They were boiling them alive in their own skins. This was the arrogance of the young races, the brutality of the ape descendants. They knew only fire. Valerius closed his eyes and waited for the darkness of death. But the darkness did not come. The pressure wave lasted for an eternity, yet the chronometer claimed it was only a few seconds. Then silence, absolute ringing silence. The floor stopped shaking. The groaning of the metal ceased. Valerius lay on the obsidian floor, gasping for air. His body felt light, impossibly light. He pushed himself up, his hands trembling. He looked at his skin. The dull, gray film that had covered his crystalline flesh was gone. It lay on the floor around him, a pile of fine, black ash. He looked up. The pods of the representatives were intact, though shaken. Everywhere, the aliens were rising, coughing, brushing the ash of the parasite from their bodies. The suffocating pressure in his chest, the constant fatigue that he had accepted as the price of the blight, had vanished. He felt clear. He felt a vitality he had not known in decades. He stumbled toward the window, the glass cracked but holding. Outside, the sky was changing. The thick gray smog of the blight spores was raining down, heavy and inert, clearing the atmosphere. Through the gaps in the clouds, for the first time in a year, the golden light of their home star pierced through, illuminating the city below. The streets were covered in gray dust, but the people were standing. They were alive. The hololith flickered back to life. Admiral Vance appeared again. He looked tired, rubbing his temples. "Target neutralized," he said, his voice calmer now, less mechanical. "Sensors confirm 99.9% destruction of the parasitic biomass. The resonance wave shattered its cellular bonds. You're going to have a lot of dust to clean up, Archon, and your infrastructure took a beating, but your people are clean." Valerius stared at the human, his mind unable to reconcile the violence of the act with the benevolence of the result. You attacked us," Valerius stammered. "You nearly shattered our world." "We performed surgery with a sledgehammer because we didn't have time for a scalpel," Vance replied, leaning back. "If we had waited for your permission, or for a debate in your council, you would all be dead by tomorrow morning. We don't play politics with extinction events, Archon. Now we are deploying shuttles, not with soldiers, but with engineers and medical supplies to help with the aftershocks. Do we have permission to land, or are you going to shoot at us for saving your lives?" The arrogance, the sheer, breathtaking efficacy. Valerius felt a laugh bubble up in his throat, a sound of hysteria and relief. "You are terrifying creatures," Valerius whispered. "But you have permission, please land." Act 2, the human reveal. The arrival of the Terran shuttles was a stark contrast to the apocalyptic descent of their mothership. They were small, boxy craft, built for utility rather than grace, painted in white and orange with the emblem of the Coalition, a hand grasping a star, emblazoned on the side. They landed in the plazas of the capital, where the citizens of the Ethelgard were still brushing the ash of the blight from their clothes, looking up at the sky with eyes wide with wonder and fear. Valerius met the human delegation at the steps of the Synod. He expected a warrior, perhaps the Admiral himself, to come and gloat over their victory. Instead, the ramp lowered to reveal a woman in a white coat, carrying a rugged case of equipment. She was short, soft-looking compared to the brutal machinery she arrived in, with dark hair tied back in a practical knot. She walked up the stairs, past the stunned royal guards, and extended a hand toward the Archon. "Dr. Eris Thorne," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Chief Xenobiologist, I need to take samples of the residual ash to ensure there's no regeneration, and we have structural engineers setting up shoring for your lower city levels. The vibration knocked out a few supports." Valerius took her hand, marveling at the warmth of it, the fragile biology of these human. "Yes, I am High Archon Valerius. Your admiral, he speaks with the force of a collapsing star. Is this how your people always operate?" Dr. Thorne smiled, a tired, crooked expression. "Admiral Vance is a hammer, I'm the sewing kit. We have different jobs. He breaks the problem, I put the pieces back together." She looked around the hall at the terrified, awestruck faces of the alien delegates. "We didn't mean to scare you. Well, Vance did. He thinks fear focuses the mind. But we saw the readings. The blight was eating your neural pathways. You were all hallucinating, paranoid, sluggish. If we had tried to talk you into the cure, the parasite would have made you refuse. We had to bypass the patient's consent to save the patient's life." This revelation struck Valerius with the force of the gravity weapon. The paranoia, the fear of the humans, the delays in the council, it had all been the blight protecting itself. The humans had seen that instantly. They had understood the Ethelgard better than the Ethelgard understood themselves. "You knew," Valerius said slowly. "You knew we would reject you." "We've seen it before," Thorne said, opening her kit and scanning the air. Not this specific parasite, but the pattern. Fear is a symptom. We humans, we are very good at recognizing fear, and we are very good at acting despite it. She paused, looking at a readout. Clean, the atmosphere is scrubbing itself. You'll have a few years of ecological rebuilding, but the contagion is gone. She looked at Valerius with a depth of empathy that unsettled him. We aren't the monsters you think we are, Archon. But we live in a dangerous neighborhood. We learned a long time ago that sometimes, to be kind, you have to be violent first. In the days that followed, the true nature of humanity was revealed to the Ethelgard, and it was a tapestry of contradictions that fascinated the ancient race. The humans were loud, abrasive, and ignored protocol. They walked into sacred temples to check structural integrity without bowing. They ate rations that smelled of chemicals. They laughed loudly and argued with each other in public. But their tireless work ethic was something the Ethelgard had never seen. The human engineers worked in shifts that would kill a normal being, welding, lifting, programming. They built water filtration systems to replace the ones clogged by the blight. They set up field hospitals where they treated Ethelgard injuries with a tenderness that belied their rough appearance. They did not ask for payment. They did not ask for territory. They asked for data. They wanted to study the blight, to map the stars in this sector, to trade stories. Valerius found himself spending hours with Admiral Vance, who had finally descended from his ship. The Admiral was not the monster Valerius had imagined. He was a man burdened by the weight of command, a philosopher soldier who read ancient Terran poetry on his datapad while overseeing the reconstruction. They sat on the balcony of the restored Synod, watching the sun set over a city that was slowly lighting up again. "Why?" Valerius asked one evening. "Why come all this way? Why expend this energy, this weaponry, for a race you do not know? We are not your allies. We have nothing you need." Vance looked at the glass of nectar Valerius had offered him, swirling it thoughtfully. "You know, back on Earth we have a story about a good Samaritan, a man who helps a stranger on the road, but that's not really why we're here." He took a sip. "We're here because we are alone, Valerius. The galaxy is vast, and it is empty, and it is cold. We found ruins of civilizations that died because they were too proud to ask for help or because no one heard them. We decided a long time ago that if we heard a scream in the dark, we would answer it. Because we hope that one day, if we scream, someone will answer us." The vulnerability in the statement shook Valerius. These titans who commanded ships that could crack planets were driven by the fear of solitude. They were not conquerors. They were travelers terrified of the dark, lighting fires wherever they could to keep the shadows at bay. "You are not what the galaxy believes you to be," Valerius said. "They call you the Terran Scourge. They say you are aggressive, expansionist." "We are aggressive," Vance admitted. "We are aggressive in our survival, and we are aggressive in our compassion. We don't do things by halves. If we fight to win. If we help until the job is done. The dangerous ship you saw, it was built to fight a war we haven't even encountered yet. We repurposed it to save you. That's the human way, turning swords into plowshares but keeping the edge sharp just in case." As the weeks turned into months, the integration between the humans and the Ethelgard deepened. The fear evaporated, replaced by a profound respect. The Ethelgard learned the logic of the humans, a logic that was not circular and meditative like their own, but linear, piercing, and effective. They learned that human aggression was often just an intolerance for suffering. The humans, in turn, learned from the Ethelgard's history, their art, their understanding of resonance and crystals. It was a cultural exchange of unprecedented scale. But beneath the surface, something was building. The humans were not just repairing, they were preparing. The hammer of Hephaestus remained in low orbit, its sensors constantly scanning the outer edge of the system. Vance spent more time in the war room than the diplomatic halls. One evening, Valerius was summoned to the human ship. It was the first time he had been aboard. The interior was utilitarian, cramped, and smelled of ozone and recycled air. He was led to the bridge, where Vance stood before a massive holographic map of the local cluster. The map was filled with red markers. "What is this?" Valerius asked, sensing the tension in the room. "The twist," Vance said grimly. "We didn't just come here because of your distress call. We came because we've been tracking the blight. You thought it was a natural disaster, a mutation." Vance tapped a console and the map zoomed out. The red markers formed a line, a path. "It's not a disease, Archon. It's a terraforming agent. It's a weapon. Someone sent it." Act 3, Unity and Larger Twist. The revelation hung in the air, heavier than the gravity of the ship. Valerius stared at the map, his mind reeling. "Sent? By whom? For what purpose?" "We call them the Harvesters," Vance said. We don't know their real name. We found 3 other dead worlds in this sector with the same ash signature. They send the blight to soften up a planet, to break down the advanced biomass, to cripple the civilization. Then they come to collect. They harvest the refined biological sludge to fuel something, their ships, their young, we don't know. Vance looked at Valerius. We didn't just cure you, we took away their lunch, and they are going to be angry. So you are still here, Valerius realized, not to rebuild, but to wait. To ambush, Vance corrected. We eliminated the aliens, the parasites, in 5 seconds, but the real enemy is about to knock on the door. The signal we disrupted, it wasn't just a kill switch for the parasite, it was a dinner bell. When the signal died, the harvesters knew the process was interrupted. They are coming to see why. The alarm klaxons blared, a harsh, rhythmic sound that made the human crew snap into motion with practiced fluidity. "Contact!" shouted a tactical officer. Multiple signatures dropping out of warp at the heliopause, massive tonnage, biomechanical configuration. Vance turned to Valerius. You have a choice, Archon. You can go back to the surface, hide in your bunkers, and hope we win, or you can stand with us. Your ships are fragile, but your crystal technology, it resonates. Our resonance cannon is powerful, but it has a long recharge cycle. If we could link your planetary grid to our emitter, we could turn your entire planet into an amplifier. Valerius did not hesitate. The fear was gone. The ancient pride of the Ethelgard had been rekindled by the fire of the humans. My people are not warriors, Admiral, but we are not cattle. We will not be harvested. He tapped his comms link. Xylos, mobilize the Synod. Activate the Grand Spire. Link all power reserves to the Terran flagship. Do whatever they say. The battle that followed was not fought with lasers and missiles, but with physics and will. The Harvester fleet arrived like a swarm of locusts, dark, organic ships that blocked out the stars, dripping with the same gray slime that had nearly killed the world. They launched waves of interceptors, biological horrors that screamed through the void. The hammer of Hephaestus moved to intercept, placing itself between the planet and the swarm. Its kinetic drivers roared, filling the space with flak and railgun fire. But there were too many of them. The human ship took heavy hits, armor buckling, atmosphere venting into space. On the bridge, sparks showered down. Vance stood amidst the chaos, calm as a statue. Status on the link, he barked. Synchronization at 80%, Dr. Thorne shouted over the comms from the surface. The Ethelgard grid is singing. It's beautiful, but it's overloading the conduits. Hold it together, Vance ordered. Target the lead harvester vessel. We're going to give them a taste of their own medicine. Valerius, standing on the bridge, closed his eyes. He reached out with his mind, connecting to the psionic network of his people. He felt them all, millions of minds, united in fear and defiance. He channeled that energy, that collective will, into the spire below. The planet began to hum. The crystals in the mountains, the glass of the cities, the very bones of the Ethelgard began to vibrate. The energy shot up the gravity well, a beam of pure harmonic light striking the hammer of Hephaestus. The Who. Man's ship absorbed the energy, its hull glowing white-hot. Firing resonance cannon, maximum yield, Vance shouted. The weapon fired. This time it was not a localized pulse. It was a scream that tore across the solar system. The beam of gravimetric distortion, amplified by the soul of a planet, struck the Harvester fleet. It didn't just break them, it unmade them. The organic matter of the enemy ships couldn't withstand the frequency. They dissolved. Great leviathans of space turned to dust in an instant, their molecular bonds severed by the song of the Ethelgard and the hammer of Terra. The shockwave cleared the system, pushing the debris out into the deep dark. Silence returned to the bridge. The hammer was battered, drifting, but alive. Vance gripped the console, his knuckles white. He looked at Valerius. Good shooting, Archon. Valerius looked at the screen, at the dust of the enemy fleet. He realized then that the title of the story the galaxy would tell was wrong. The humans hadn't eliminated the aliens. They had evolved them. The Ethelgard were no longer just the weavers of light. They were the shield brothers of Terra. The aftermath was a time of solemn celebration. The threat was gone, but the knowledge of what lay in the dark remained. The larger twist that Vance had hinted at came during the final council meeting. The Harvesters were not just a random scourge. The data recovered from their debris revealed a map of the galaxy divided into harvest zones. The Ethelgard were Zone 4, Earth was Zone 1. They weren't just coming for you, Vance revealed to the Synod, the holographic map casting a grim light on his face. They were farming us, all of us. We tracked them here because we found a scout ship near Mars. We realized we were on the menu. The room was silent, but it was not the fearful silence of before. It was a calculating silence. They will come back, Valerius said, his voice hard crystalline. Not a scout fleet, the main swarm. Yes, Vance nodded. They will, and when they do, we'll need more than one ship. We'll need a fleet. We'll need an alliance. He looked around the chamber at the thousands of alien representatives who had once debated humanity with fear. We'll need friends. Valerius stood up. He looked different now. The scars of the blight were gone, but the experience had hardened him. He looked like a king of old, a warrior poet. You eliminated the sickness that weakened us, Valerius declared. You eliminated the lie that we were safe. You eliminated the aliens we used to be. We are something new now. He extended a hand to Vance. The Ethel Guard stands with Terra. Let them come. We will meet them together. The story of the day the humans arrived became a legend in the sector. It was told not as a tale of invasion, but as a tale of awakening. The title, Aliens Thought They'd Get Aid, Humans Attacked with a Dangerous Ship and Eliminated the Aliens in 5, became a grim joke among the Alliance fleets. The aliens were indeed eliminated. The weak, divided, fearful creatures they had been were burned away in 5 seconds of fire and sound, replaced by a forged coalition of steel and crystal, ready to face the darkness of the universe not with a plea for help, but with a war cry. As the hammer of Hephaestus finally broke orbit, dragging its scars like metals, Valerius watched it go. He knew they would return. The galaxy was dark and full of terrors, but for the first time in 10,000 years, the Ethel Guard were not afraid of the dark. They had found the fire, and they had found the ones who carried it. And in the deep silence of the void, the signal of the Alliance began to broadcast, not a cry for help, but a warning to anything listening in the shadows. We are here. We are united, and we are waiting. The philosophical weight of the events settled on the planet. The citizens looked to the stars not as a ceiling, but as a frontier. They understood now that peace was not a natural state of the universe, but a garden that had to be walled and defended. The humans had taught them that ethics without power was merely a polite way to die, and power without ethics was tyranny, but together they were justice. The dangerous ship was no longer a symbol of fear, but of salvation, and the countdown. The 5, it was no longer a countdown to death. It was the countdown to a new age. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 launch. The fleets of the Ethel Guard, newly retrofitted with kinetic drivers and resonance plating, lifted off to join the human formation. The future was uncertain, violent, and dangerous, and it was the most beautiful thing Valerius had ever seen. The end.